Okay, that's the Tetons at dawn, and I've had a bit of bad luck. Turns out my transmitter had been nudged on overnight, so I had a flat battery, and had I not had a spare I wouldn't have been able to make a flight at all. However, I did have a spare and I managed to get one flight out of it before that battery too, which wasn't really charged, went flat. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the aerial video kit and what it'll sort of cost you. The plane itself is actually dirt cheap. They're about $70, but all you get is the wings, the fuselage, the control wires and so on. So the stuff that you will need to furnish it with are servos, which will set you back $10–15 a piece, and you'll also need to extend the rudder. The control, the stock rudder has almost no control unless you've got thrust going over it. So if the plane's gliding, you have very little control. So what you need to do is extend the rudder such that you get better control when you're gliding, or such that you don't have to apply thrust. The motor is a Tower Pro 2409 12 Delta, and these are incredibly powerful little AC motors. So what you've actually got in there is a load of little coils and magnets that are slightly out of sync, such that you give pulses to these in sequence, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and that actually moves the neodymium magnets from one point to the next. And the great thing about these is they're brushless motors, so it's not like the DC where all you do is you apply more voltage to make it spin faster. Here you actually need to do electrical switching between 1 2 3 1 2 3, and you need to do that quicker and quicker. So you'll also need with that a brushless speed controller, and so this basically just does the 1 2 3 1 2 3 thing faster and faster, or I assume it's just faster and faster. It might be a higher current as well. But so the great place for getting these, the deal that you can get off a place called United Hobbies, it's a place in China but it's pretty good, is the motor costs about $10, the speed controller about 15, but you can get a deal for about I forget what it is, but compared to what you would pay for not getting these from China, it's probably a factor of 2 or 3 in savings. Anyway, I've elevated the pylon on this such that I can actually put a bigger propeller on and get comparable thrust at higher altitude. And this is just a piece of drain pipe fitting, piece of plywood. What you'll find is the propeller needs to be slightly off at an angle, because as the propeller spins it creates a torque which tends to pull the plane one way, so you need to actually direct the thrust off at a slight angle to actually get the plane to fly straight when you apply power. Okay, so controller this is a fantastic controller for the pan and tilt. The controller I got from the same place as I got the motor and the speed controller. That's United Hobbies, but the controller is a 6-channel controller and it costs about $60–70, but it comes with 3 servos, which is great, and a DC speed controller, which isn't really that much use, but it comes with batteries, charger and a 6-channel controller. But the great thing about this 6-channel controller, usually most 6 channels, they have 4 channels here, and then you get sort of switches for channel 6, and the rest is usually mixers. So it's actually quite hard to get. You've got your elevator, your rudder, your speed control, then you would usually you can have this one for panning the camera, and then you need one extra one for tilting it, and that's actually really hard to find. And indeed the only one that the one that seems popular for doing it with, you actually have to plug something extra in the back, and that'll set you back about $300. So these coming in at about $60–70 are really quite a good deal. Okay, on to and that also comes with a receiver. So that's Yeah, you'll watch, if you watch that, it'll drop like a rock. Okay, so with a little tinkering, you can actually get pan on this one. So if you notice, the H is because it's on a helicopter setting. So you've got pan here, oops, be careful baby, and tilt there. So that's great, but I'm going to have to unplug this because otherwise the battery on the transmitter is almost flat. So okay, that brings us to the video gear. So what you need is a camera, pan and tilt servos, a video transmitter, and some receiving gear. The pan and tilt thing comes from Rangevideo, and that comes with 2 servos, and that'll set you back about $30. The camera's about 100, and the transmitter receiver, these come in a range of powers anywhere from 10 milliwatts up to about 1 watt. And I think you meant to have a license for anything over 10 milliwatts, but it seems to be a rule that's observed more in the breach than the observed, or whatever Shakespeare said. But you'll also notice this is held together with rubber bands and the such like, and that's really quite deliberate. And that's in the event that the plane gets a hard knock, that you don't destroy everything, it doesn't break. Which for me is actually quite often. But so the whole thing is held together with bands and Velcro, which actually is really quite successful. This is quite common in planes, that you can hold things on with Velcro, because the forces aren't great and it's a very quick and easy way to do things. You'll also need a battery for the video transmitter. Okay, coming on to the video receiving gear, you'll notice I've got mine mounted on a cycle helmet. You don't actually need that. So your normal video gear receiver, I'm not sure I've got one to hand, apparently not, but they're just little black boxes. So that's the receiver, and then you just usually have a little whip antenna like this on it. So this is actually quite a nice receiver. Usually the transmitter receiver, they come in at about $100 for the pair, for something of about, I don't know, 200 milliwatts or something. This is diversity receiver, this will set you back about $300. So what this actually has is 2 antennae, and it switches between them really quickly depending on which one's got the better signal. And on one of those antennas I've got a little whip, on the other one I've got this high gain antenna. And the high gain antenna is of course mounted on a cycle helmet, such that you're always looking at the plane. So this is a directional aerial, that means it's always pointing at the plane, which is really quite successful. Then you will need something to record your video on, which is just a live tech thing. It just needs an AV in. And so if I plug in my video, you'll now get to see me videoing it. Anyway, okay, and they come in at about $100. So what goes into the air at 60, 100, 130, 230, 300 with a battery, maybe $400 goes into the air, and the bare minimum of what you need on the ground is about 100 here, 150 or something. A real cheap alternative to all this is these things. This is called Flycam 1, and basically you just stick that on your plane and it records video. Now obviously you don't get the live feedback, but yeah, such is life. You don't need all the expensive gear, so you could do this significantly cheaper. I've since found that flying whilst trying to actually watch this at the same time is a recipe for disaster, in that the plane very soon shrinks to a dot, and finding that dot again when you've been looking at this thing is almost impossible. So it's just a lesson. I mean, there are these people who have the virtual reality goggles on and they fly them like that, but I wanted to fly these planes somewhere a little more exciting. So, but as it turns out, I could probably just get by with a pan and tilt and a fairly nice recording mechanism.